Hi there guys, today we're going to be talking about Baba Yaga. She recently got a trailer, right? So it makes sense. So she's famous for eating children or those that fail to complete her tasks. And Baba Yaga is usually an old woman, but she can also be part of a trio of sisters with unflattering appearances. Baba itself tends to mean something like grandmother, and Yaga can mean snake or wicked. This varies depending on the language, of course, but those are typically the general meanings. And she lives in a forest herd on chicken legs in some tales by herself, and in others with her two sisters, also named Baba Yaga, or sometimes it's just her that's named Baba Yaga. Either way, she rides around on a giant mortar with a pestle, or in an iron kettle, and can conjure tempests on her way. As an elderly woman, she typically looks like a bony and wizened crone, with skinny arms, legs, and a protruding nose. Also, she's known to wear a necklace of human bones. Okay, to be fair, that physical description, again, does vary a fair bit, but typically the old-looking part is intact. And she also has some degree of control over night and day through horsemen, and her hut itself is a fearsome place to be around. She's a lot like a boogeyman in that her stories tend to be the type that you would tell kids in order to scare them away from doing silly things like wandering off on their own or, not listening to the good advice of their parents, say. I mean, those sorts of stories worked on me, so, Because of that, she's usually painted in a less than holy light, shall we say. Now, part of that also comes from the fact that, thanks to the spread of Christianity, a lot of her myths were painted in sort of a darker light, right? But she also does have some good points to her in her stories as well. Not all of them, but some of them. She has some competence with this. The Cladinet's a sword with a mighty magical blade that can attack and defend on its own without human aid. In other words, you don't have to touch the blade, but it can swing and attack people without being touched. It's kind of cool. She also is known to give wisdom and shelter to heroes in some of her tales, so she's not all that bad. That said, going to talk about one of the most famous stories concerning the Baba Yaga, and that's the story of a little girl called Vassilisa. Now, some time ago, an old man and an old woman lived with their daughter, Vassilisa, in a small hut. They lived humble but happy lives until the old woman fell ill, and at her bedside, she gives her daughter a doll, saying that she must take good care of the doll and never let anyone see it. Should anything bad happen, she can feed the doll and ask it for advice, and the doll will help her with her troubles. After the death of his wife, the old man grieves for a time, and then he remarries. He hopes to give Vassilisa a kind second mother, but the stepmother was cruel instead. The stepmother had two daughters of her own, who she'd show the utmost affections for, whilst shaming Vassilisa, putting her to work around the hut. They bet that she turned thin and frail from all the work they put her through, saying things like, "Come, Vassilisa, where are you? Vassilisa, fetch the wood, don't be slow, start a fire, mix the dough, wash the plates, milk the cow, scrub the floor, hurry now, work away, don't take all day." Vassilisa, of course, obeyed and got all her chores done on time. With each day, she grew more beautiful, but really, the doll did all the work. See, at the start of each day, Vas would milk the cow, then lock herself in the pantry, giving the milk to the doll, and she would say, "Come, little doll, drink your milk, my dear, and I'll put all of my troubles in your ear." A fair deal, I know, but the doll would drink the milk and then comfort Vassilisa, then do all of her chores pretty much. One day, the old man would leave the family, and they didn't expect to see him for some time. The stepmother gave tasks to each daughter. The first was to weave lace, the second was to set knitting sticks, and Vas was to spin yarn. She puts all of the lights out in the house, leaving only a small splinter emanating from a birch, and went to bed. This light, of course, fades as well, and both sisters, the stepsisters I mean, state that they have more than enough light from the tiny little splinter of the needle light that they have, so they're all good, and because Vassilisa has to go and get them more light. So they shove her out of the house and off she goes. It's in the dead of night, really pitch black. She's terrified, of course, but she goes because, well, she's taken all of this stuff from this point onwards in the story, so off she goes. Of course she's sobbing by this point and cries to the doll. He follows the pattern and feeds it, and then the doll listens to her troubles and comforts her, saying, "You'll be alright, nothing bad can happen to you whilst I'm with you." Vas pressed on, clutching the doll. Soon she met a mounted horseman clad in white, with a white horse to boot, which shone in the darkness. As dawn broke and her hands began to numb on account of the cold, Vas met paths with another horseman clad in red, on a red horse. As the sun arose, its warmth lifted her spirit a bit, and she found the hut. Its fence was made of the bones of men, and the gate of men's leg bones. All the bones shocked Vas dead still, as a third rider intercepted her flank. He was dressed in all black, and as he approached, he disappeared into thin air, turning day into night. Now at this point, of course, Vas was paralyzed by fear, and Baba Yaga appears on her mortar. She zipped to the gate and shrieked, "I smell Russian flesh. Who is here?" Vassilisa came up to Baba Yaga, bowed low to her, and said very humbly, "It is I, Vassilisa, Grandma. My stepsister sent me to ask you for a light." Baba Yaga invited Vas to stay a while, noting that her stepmother was a kinswoman of hers. Passing through the gate, a birch tree rose, prompting Baba to command it not to touch Vas. The same orders were repeated to an old cat and a bite-happy dog. Baba wastes no time putting Vas to work, promising to eat Vas should she fail to complete any tasks to her exact specifications. As you can imagine, the whole point of these tasks was that they were supposed to be impossible to complete, but Vas simply used the doll again, feeding it and letting it know exactly what was going on, so the doll did all of the chores, so by the time Baba got back, everything was completed. Now this happened once or twice more, and Baba just grew tired of Vas completing all the challenges, so she decided just to eat the child outright. Only problem was that she revealed this plan out loud enough for Vas to hear, and Vas decided to cry to the doll and hatch a plan to escape. Before leaving, Vas grabs a light from the witch's hut, which is actually encased in a skull, and as she leaves, she's confronted by the dog, the cat, the tree, and the gate. She tends to each by giving the dog a bone, and it lets her pass, the cat some food, and it lets her pass, the tree's roots she ties up with a ribbon, and the gate's joints she refreshes with some lubricant of some kind. They all let Vas pass, and she dashes for her home. Now, when Baba Yaga, questions all of these different guards as to why they allowed Vas to escape, they simply respond that Vas was the person to give them any sort of kindness or care and attention in so long, and that they were just so amazed by this show of kindness that they decided to let her pass. So when Vas returns, she gives the light to her stepsisters, and ultimately it ignites into flames and kills not only the stepsisters, but also the stepmother as well. After this, Vassilisa decides to bury the skull, and that puts an end to any further harm that could be done by it. And then she decides to go to the local village where she's adopted by another woman and develops her sewing skills. Now, thanks to this, her sewing skills are so great that she even comes under the employ of a royal, and that royal just happens to be a prince that's not necessarily next in line, but he's a prince, so pretty well off, right? Eventually the two marry, and Vas gets to live in pretty nice conditions with her new stepmom and her original father as well as the prince. So it's sort of a happily ever after sort of deal. Now, of course, from that story, you can get a sense of how powerful Baba Yaga is. So she commands, of course, various different, forces. She's controlling day and night there, you can see. She has the ability to control various different creatures, it seems. Cats, dogs, even extending that control to trees, even if that might be limited to, beings around or within her hut. That's still pretty dangerous, and also her hut seems like a place you never want to go to ever, because it's just certain death, it seems, especially if you're a child. Seems to love eating children for some reason or another. But also, in a sense, she's sort of Vas's savior, because without Baba Yaga, Vas would still be tormented by her new step family, right? So in a sense, Baba Yaga is also a savior, so bit of that duality continuing on through the story as well. But that was the video on Baba Yaga. I hope that you of course did enjoy, and if you did, go ahead and slap that like button, and if there are any other gods or anything you want me to cover, do leave the suggestion in the comment section. And with that, thank you very much for checking this out, have yourself a good day, and, well, stay frosty.